Group 1's topic is invasive species, ecosystem services, and human well-being. So what are invasive alien species, otherwise known as IAS? An invasive species is defined as a non-native or an alien to a certain ecosystem or environment, and is likely to cause economic or environmental hardship. Invasive species end up where they end up, mostly by human activities, traveling, luggage, mostly plants in that way. But an example of invasive species in the United States is the cane toad, and the cane toad is very poisonous, and so it doesn't really have a lot of predators, if any at all, and it can be found in mostly Florida and Hawaii. The cost of invasive species. So a study from 1993 by the OTA found that $1.1 million to $137 million annually was spent on not only controlling the invasive species, but also rebuilding the environments and ecosystems that they have gone through and destroyed. An example of an invasive species is the North American signal crayfish, and they actually went through and wiped out the whole population of white-clawed freshwater crayfish through competition and actually transmission of diseases. And another example is plants. Plants. There are a lot of invasive plants in the United States and all across the world, especially in Yosemite Park. Thousands, even millions of travelers go in and out of there each year, bringing along with them different species that should not be there at all.
I'm going to talk to you about the benefits of invasive species. The overall category is supporting services, and those are benefits that people obtain from nature, and in this case would be the invasive species. So the first one is the provisioning services, and that includes food, fiber, and fuel. So an example of this would be in Florida, there's an invasive tree that has a positive impact on honey production, and the United States benefits $15 million annually from it. The next category is regulating services, and that includes pollination, water purification, pest control, natural hazards, and climate mitigation. So an example of this is in East Africa, the invasion of the dense strands of the Lantana is the new habitat for the fly that carries sleeping sickness. And the last category is cultural services, and that includes recreation, tourism, spirituality, and education. And in this, the invasive species in some areas have added to the aesthetic beauty of the landscape in a positive way. Now I'm going to talk about the synergies and the trade-offs with invasive species. So the first one is the woody plant in South Africa. The positive impact is on fuel. It creates more firewood and charcoal, which has a value of $143 million. And the negative impact is that on fresh water, the invasive species use more water than the native species, and that costs about $1.4 billion in water loss. The next is zebra mussels in the Great Lakes, and the positive impact from the zebra mussels is on the cultural heritage because fouled shipwrecks are spotted more easily. And then the negative impact would be on tourism because the mussels cover beaches, boats, and docks, and they threaten about $4 billion in sports fishery. And then the last example is feral pigs in Hawaii. The positive impact is on recreation, and the pigs have been important in hunting over the last 150 years. And the negative impact is on the water purification. The pigs deposit fecal matter and increase sedimentation in waterways and cause damage to natural parks, costing about $450,000 annually.
How to control invasive species? There are three ways. One is biological control. This is introducing enemies of the species for the purpose of controlling the pests. One example of this would be goats. They are introduced into the area with the invasive plant or bug, and the goats just eat all of the pest. Another type of way to control the invasive species is called mechanical control. It is physically removing the plant by mowing or cultivation or even just pulling by hand. Crabgrass is an invasive plant that is easy to pull by hand. Crabgrass is very common around Kentucky. Another way is chemical control, and this is the use of herbicides to kill and inhibit regrowth. Field bindweed must be handled using herbicides due to small fragments being left behind can result in a new plant growing. In conclusion, invasive species are non-native species that can cause harm to the environment that they are introduced to. They are disruptive to the natural ecosystem and harmful to the native inhabitants. Controlling these species is very important for the environment and the economy. As stated previously in this presentation, they can disrupt the water and food supply of many different organisms, including humans. The three pictures at the top are three plants that are invasive species that are very common in Kentucky. These are bush honeysuckle, kudzu, and Japanese stillgrass.